Good morning, everyone. My name is Johnny Lonjola, and this is Chapter 11, Emergent Literacy. Emergent literacy, early reading and writing development. During early speech and language development, children learn skills that are important to the development of literacy, reading and writing. This stage, known as emergent literacy, begins at birth and continues through the preschool years. Ang emergent literacy ay nag-uumpisa mula sa kanilang pagsilang. Kahit hindi pa sila masyadong nakakaintindi, ang ginagawa ng magulang, binabasahan na sila ng storybook. At dahil tayo ay nasa panahon ng gadget, sila ay pinapanood naman ng mga nursery rhymes mula kay Cocomelon, Pingpong, Chuchu TV, Tutitu at iba pang panuorang pambata. Emergent literacy knowledge refers to what the children learn about reading and writing before they are considered as readers and writers, while emergent literacy skills are the ways that children demonstrate knowledge. Emergent literacy knowledge tumutukoy sa mga batang marunong ng magbasa at sumulat. Samantalang ang emergent literacy skills naman, ito naman ay tumutukoy kung paano na i-apply ng mga bata mula sa kanilang natutunan. Emergent literacy knowledge as a continuum of development. Literacy development begins early in life and long before formal literacy instruction in school. There is an interrelationship between oral language skills and written skills such that the skills develop concurrently and interrelatedly rather than in some sequence. In addition, children's cognitive development during early childhood is important to their literacy development. The functions of literacy are important as the forms of literacy to the child's literacy development in early childhood. Children's active exploration of print within their environment and their social interactions with adults, especially with their parents, within reading and writing contests, provide important opportunities for adults to model literacy behaviors for children to learn. There is a variability for typically developing children in the age and sequence of acquisition of emergent literacy knowledge and skills across the continuum of literacy development. Literacy development sa uumpisas mula sa kanilang pagsilang hanggang sa sila ay pumasok sa formal education kung saan sila tinuturuan magbasa at magsulat. Importante sa importante sa literacy development sa mga bata ang cognitive development during their early childhood. Makatutulong din ang mga magulang sa pag-develop ng literacy ng mga bata sa pamamagitan ng pakikipag-usap at pagbabasa ng libro at pagtuturo kung paano magsulat. Timing of the emergent literacy stage. Ang timing sa emergent literacy stage ay importante para maging handa ang bata sa pagpasok sa paaralan. Dito makikita na ang mga bata ay excited pumasok sa school. Sila yung mga papasok sa preschool o kaya sa daycare. Dito sila ay nahubog upang matutong magsulat at magbasa. Para pagpasok nila sa grade 1, marunong na silang magbasa at magsulat. Perspective on the emergent literacy stage. In categorizing framework for emergent literacy stage, there are three main perspectives: a developmental perspective, a component perspective, and a child and environment influences perspective. Ang mga nakapaligid sa bata ay may malaking impluwensya upang ma-develop ang kanilang umuusbong na literacy. The Goodman Framework. Narito ang 5 area sa pag-develop ng mga bata sa karunungan at kahusayan ng mga bata. Letter A is ang print awareness in situational context. Can be observed when the child begins to learn and recognize his or her environment. Makikita sa bata na natututo na siya sa kanyang paligid. Letter B, print awareness in discourse occurs when the child is beginning to be exposed to print in books, magazine, tabloids, and electronic sources in which the child learns that each symbol that he or she sees in print serves in particular purpose. Child then learns to manipulate media that they are being exposed to, like turning the pages of the book from the left to right. Ang bata ay marunong nang magbuklat-buklat na ng libro. Interesado na siya sa mga nakasulat sa libro. Tinitingnan niya na yung bawat larawan, bawat nakasulat. Pero mas interesado siya sa drawing. C. Functions and forms of writing begins when the child writes by scribbling or drawing lines that represent letters. Nag-umpisa ng magsulat-sulat ng linya or drawings ang mga bata. Pag nakahawak sila ng lapis o kaya krayola, sulat dito, sulat doon, susulatan niya yung pader, susulatan niya yung sahig o kaya kahit ang bed cover, susulatan niya. Susulatan nila kanila ng work of art, tinatawag. Kasi nga, feeling nila tama yung kanilang sinusulat. Basta makabuo sila ng lines, ng letters. Akala nila marunong yung pabilog-bilog-bilog. Pag tinanong mo, ano yan? Pangalan daw niya yun. O ano to? Ito ay pangalan ni Mami. Ganun ang sinasabi nila kahit na tayo hindi natin sila maintindihan. Next is oral language, to talk about written language. This occurs when the child begins to understand that print has function and he or she may begin to talk about it. A child may say that books convey stories through the use of words and pictures. Makikita mo yung bata, marunong na siyang magkwento kapag nakita niya yung libro na may drawings. Kunwari si Kuneho at si Pagong, pag nakita niya nito, sabi niya, ay, si Kuneho, ang kwento ito ni Kuneho at ni Pagong. So, marunong na din siyang magkwento. Marunong ikikwento niya iyon sa kapwa niya bata. Pag kunwari siya, may alam akong kwento na lagi itong binabasa sa akin ni Mami. Si Kuneho at si Pagong. So, marunong na din siyang mag-convey ng stories. Letter E, metacognitive and metalinguistic awareness about written language. This is when the child understands literacy terms and uses words to describe what he or she is reading. So, naiintindihan na ng bata kung ano yung kanyang binabasa. Kasi ngayon, alam na niya yung kanyang literacy. Marunong na siya mag-describe ng words. Madi-describe niya na kung anong itsura ni Pagong, madi-describe niya na kung anong ginagawa ng Pagong, anong ginawa ni Pagong, kung bakit nanalo si Pagong. Yun. The McCormick and Mason Framework. There are 3 hierarchy of knowledge and skills. Letter A, function of print. Children's understanding of literacy starts as being context-dependent, wherein children may start to read environmental print but are not able to read some same exact environment print in other situation. Nauunawaan nila ang tekstong binabasa nila sa kanila palagi, pero kapag naiba na ang kwento or naiba na ang mga drawing, hindi na nila ito mababasa. Kumbaga dahil paulit-ulit sa kanila na binabasa, nagiging familiar na sa kanila ang kwento. Halimbawa, si Kuneho, the turtle and the rabbit, ang kuneho at ang pagong. Pag naiba yung pamagat, naging the tortoise and the hare, parang iba na yung sinasabi niya. Hindi niya na alam kung ano yung naikwento sa kanya na yung pala yun, si Pagong at ang kuneho pala yun, na iba lang yung pangalan. Naging tortoise na at si hire yung kuneho. Next is form of print. Since the child is now centered on the form of print rather than the function of print, which enable them to apply phonic analysis in which they learn about the structures of print rather than being context dependent. They now learn about grapheme or phoneme and experiment through the use of their increased reading exposure. So, yung phoneme, yun yung smallest sound, unit of sounds. Phonemes can be put together to make sounds. Halimbawa, yung letter A, yung sounds na A, yun yung phoneme. Pero pag sinulat na yung letter A, yun yung grapheme. Letter C. Coordination of the form of print and function of print. Since children in this stage have now skills for both form and function, they can now use it simultaneously in order for them to read. They have now clearer and more efficient ways to decode printed words and also give attention to words meaning. Sa stage na ito, nakakaintindi na yung mga bata sa kanilang binabasa. Nabibigyan na rin nila ng meaning ang bawat salita na kanilang nababasa.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Winona T. Fabelia and I'm going to tackle about the Strawman and Mates 2000 framework. Strawman and Mates 2000 framework. This framework was originated from a longitudinal study which aims to determine whether children were similar in their concepts about what readers do and demonstrated a similar sequence in their development of these concepts. This framework emphasizes the social aspect of reading, which children first look at the illustration in the book and then begin to tell a sequence story through the pictures in the book, then progress to retelling the story, and finally, children use multiple strategies to attempt to decode the print and read the story. There are 6 concepts about reading that are observed during the emergent literacy stage. The first one is reading as one aspect of interpersonal routine. To children, reading is one special and important aspect of an interpersonal routine that helps them develop their social routine. It is because they can relate to the stories, get some lessons, and learn from it. That is the first minor role of books to readers. The second one is readers focus on the book. Social routine is developed between readers and the book. Readers focus on the book for the reason that they get a lot of information, great stories, lessons, and ideas which they had not known before. The third one is readers construct a sequence account. Books also help readers in construction of ideas, lesson sequence account, and meaningful story because the illustration lead them through and makes it easier to make it. The fourth one is the readers reconstruct a specific account. By reading books, readers recognize that the content of the story is unique or different in each book and they learn now to reconstruct them. Sometimes they change words and sometimes the words stay the same. The fifth one is readers refer to print To reconstruct text. Printed texts are good reference to construct story. The only thing is sometimes decoding print is not always understood. By using multiple strategies. Readers use different or multiple strategies to help them understand and read the printed text. So, those are the 6 concepts about reading. Now, let's proceed to early literacy skills. Early literacy skills are an important component of school readiness skills. It is foundational in the attainment of later literacy skills and instrumental in shaping a child's quality of life as an adult. The following are examples of early literacy skills. The alphabet knowledge, phonological processing, phonological awareness, phonological memory, rapid automatic naming, writing letters and writing names, concepts of print, oral language, visual processing. The examples of literacy skills were mentioned. So, what should we do to develop their skills? There are 3 necessary ingredients, and in order for us to remember it easily, we need to think of the word aim, which means to point or reach toward the target, to help our children to become as communicative and as literate as possible. Are the assistive technologies that can give all children. I stands for interaction. Not only do children need to have ways to look at books and use crayons, they also need a way to interact with others while playing with these early literacy related toys. The given are the children's early literacy related interactions. Become literate. Children need to see older children and adults using reading and writing to accomplish real goals. Children who grow up seeing us read magazines, newspapers, and books will often choose these activities themselves. Become literate. Children need to see older children and adults using reading and writing to accomplish real goals. Children who grow up seeing us read magazines, newspapers, and books will often choose these activities themselves. We can model the value and uses of print during our everyday routine because simple activities can help children to understand that printed language can also be used to get us what we want and need.
Good day, everyone. I am Mahalalel H. Jola, and my topic for today is about Storch and Whitehurst framework. One of the skills under Storch and Whitehurst framework is the oral language skills. According to this framework, these skills that a child acquires during emergent literacy would later form the foundation of conventional literacy. During preschool and kindergarten, code-related skills and oral language skills have a strong reciprocal relationship which diminishes and becomes independent of each other. For oral language skills, there are semantic knowledge, syntactic knowledge, narrative discourse, and conceptual knowledge. Semantic knowledge is a general information that one has acquired. It is a knowledge that is not tied to any specific object, event, domain, or application. It includes word knowledge, as in a dictionary, and general factual information about the world, as in encyclopedia, and oneself also called generic knowledge. For an example, word definitions or meaning of the letters. That is the semantic knowledge. Syntactic knowledge is the knowledge of how words can be combined in meaningful sentences, phrases, or utterances. It involves the way that words are assembled and sentences are constructed in a particular languages. This, we know how to put words together in an appropriate way. We construct sentences correctly and combine words. In this sense, semantic knowledge precedes syntactic knowledge. Next is the narrative discourse. It is the narration, written or oral, of an event or series of events, real or imaginary. For example, is a telling a story. The last one is the conceptual knowledge, refers to the knowledge of or understanding of concept, principles, theories, models, classification, etc. We learn conceptual knowledge through reading, viewing, listening, experiencing, or thoughtful, reflective mental activity. The Van Click. This framework demonstrates the interrelationship among four components, which are the context processor, the meaning processor, the orthographic processor, and the phonological processor. The context processors enables children to comprehend and interpret text that is being read to them before they can read, and that they will read themselves later on in their literacy development. Context processor skills include world knowledge, syntactic knowledge, narrative development, book conventions, abstract language, and function of print. The meaning processor. Important to children's ability to apply lexical knowledge to the meaning of individual words. Meaning processor skills include word awareness and vocabulary development. The third one is the orthographic processor. It involves the ability to recognize individual letter units that enable the child to identify individual letters and consequences of letters. Orthographic skills include print convention and letter knowledge. The last one is the phonological processor. It enables the child to use phonological awareness skills to convert printed letters into sounds and sound sequences. Phonological processor skills include syllable segmentation, rhyming, and phoneme segmentation. On the child and environmental influences perspective, the most recent framework for the emergent literacy stage reflect the growing acknowledgement of child development studies across various disciplines, that a child's progression through different stages result from the influence of child and environmental factors either acting separately or in some complex interaction. For example, in the prenatal environment, the mother uses drugs or alcohol, viral or bacterial disease, and direct traumatic injury to the fetus. In the physical environment, the air the child breathes, the nutritional value of food and the child eats, exposure to conditions that can lead to disease, accident, or injury, including child abuse and neglect. In the social cultural environment, consists of the norms, values, beliefs, systems, and morals. Next framework is the Mac-Newton framework. Emerging from Mac-Newton's socialization model of child development, this framework suggests that a child's emergent literacy development is structured within initial family experiences, built from specific activities, and formed into system of expertise, which then are applicable in some way to all of child's primary environment. There are four distinct and identifiable components of family literacy practices which result to the child's learning and development. These are family practices, activities, system for learning and development, relationship between settings. On the family practices, this is how children are socialized, thus creating ways of thinking, acting, and using language that are considered appropriate by various cultural and social communities with which the family identifies. This results to children being exposed to written language within different contexts. Next is activities. Literacy activity can also be observed in reading and writing activities done by the family. Said activities can have rules and goals and can be accomplished alone or with family members or the whole family. Third one is the system for learning and development. These occur within the family and interact with the activities that provide learning context. There are two systems of learning and development. The first is when the family is involved in activities with the child, and the second is when the child explores writing and reading alone. Through this system, the child develops expertise. The last one is the relationship between settings. This influences how child learns and develops different areas of expertise when participating in similar activities within and across a variety of settings. The next framework is the Basic and Hendrickson framework. In this framework, there are four major variables that influence literacy development in young children. One is the parental characteristic, second is the child characteristic, third is the home literacy environment, and the last one is the parent-child relationship. In parental characteristic, there are three characteristics that influence or affect the development of young children. One is the culture and ethnicity. It affects areas such as expectation for education, pattern for language, preference for types of literacy activity, and the structures of task. The second is the parental belief. This includes families about the role of education system in the literacy development of their children. The last one is the socio-economic status of the family. It can affect how much time spent in literacy development of children, financial resources, and underlying purposes of these activities. The next variable is the child characteristics. This includes the child's level of engagement and interaction in literacy-related activities, language proficiency, cognitive abilities, developmental achievement, motivation, attention, and health conditions that can affect language and literacy development. The third one is the home literacy environment. This includes book sharing between parents and children, parents reading aloud with their children, print materials being available to the children, and positive attitude of parents toward literacy activities. This includes direct and indirect literacy-related events. Activities where the child engaged fall under direct literacy-related activities, while child learning through observation of others as they engage in activities falls under indirect literacy-related activities. The last one is the parent-child relationship. The literacy interaction between the child and his or her parents nurture the child's emergent literacy skills, and the absence of such is detrimental to the child's emergent literacy development.
Unlocking difficulties, emerging simultaneously, literacy, optimal, pedagogical, and intervention. Chapter 12, Language Development and its Pedagogical Implications. Optical language and literacy development in the language of instruction is a desirable outcome. This development depends on internal characteristics of children, as well as instruction and family support. Children and families largely influence school success. However, education can have a significant impact. This impact depends on their expectations, instructional and assessment practice, and willingness to help all children regardless of language and cultural background or individual abilities to succeed. As a parent, before our children enter the school, we need to use a satisfactory and most desirable language for the better development and learning outcome of our children. Their internal characteristics will develop if we support them properly. The teachers have the biggest impact to the children. They depend on the background of the learners so that they can think of what instructional materials and assessment practice to be used. The following are suggestions for instruction to support such development. Interventions for developing language and facilitating emerging literacy among children. Number 1. Use lots of vocalization interaction during the early months. This can lead to turn taking. Using vocalized words are very useful. The child will be more interactive because the more you use vocalized words, the more they remember what you teach. Number 2. Use stress, clearly toned and repeated utterance. This can lead to turn-taking and active participation. Teachers should use stress, clearly intoned and repeated utterance so that the children can remember the words and pronounce it clearly in active participation. Number 3. Refers to objects, events, and qualities within sentence while showing and speaking to the child. This leads to lexical development. The teacher, when reading a sentence, she or he need to refer, relate, or enter objects, events, and qualities so that the learners can encounter another vocabulary word. Number 4. Attend to and acknowledge the child's reference to objects, events, and qualities. This leads to further lexical development and good effects. The teacher should pay attention to the reference he or she is using during teaching, because if he or she insert objects, events, and qualities, the vocabulary of the learners will be more enhanced. Number 5. Read to the child. This can help emerging literacy. We are all sure that not all children are good in reading. Before they enter school, as a teacher, we need to read to them, especially when the topic is about short story. Number 6. Provide opportunities to scribble and draw. This can help in emerging literacy, so that the teacher should provide an opportunities to the learners in scribbling and drawing so that the learners can develop or improve their drawing and scribbling. Number 7. Additional suggestions for interventions with bilingual children. When giving additional suggestions with bilingual children, make the whole class to understand the main point or idea. When it comes to multi-language learning, these suggestions were found effective in studies on emergent literacy. First is reassure families that bilingualism is possible, desirable, and support language development. The teacher must teach their children two or more languages, the mother tongue and national language, so that they can easily catch up and understand another language in time they entering in the school. Number 2. Speak to bilingual children in the same manner as to monolingual children. This will expose the child to other language in a natural way. As a teacher, we need to teach and speak to bilingual and monolingual children in the same manner. The purpose of this is to help and expose the monolingual children for the better acquisitions and development in another language. Number 3. Address and include children who speak another language. This helps language development even if they do not initially understand. Give a chance or address a student who can speak another language so that the other learners can relate, aware, and acquire languages, even they are not totally understand. The purpose of this is awareness to another language. Number 4. Use language consistently at the nursery and reassure parents that they should do so in the home. This helps bilingual language development. Here in our country, the national language is Filipino. As a teacher, as well as parents, we must use Filipino language, especially in nursery. It helps them to develop bilingual language. Number 5. Suggest to parents that providing a good model of a language will assist children. As a teacher, we need to tell or suggest the parents of our learners to be a good model of language. So it helps the children to develop their bilingual language. Number 6. Help parents make the appropriate language choice for use with their child. As a teacher, we need to help parents to make an appropriate language to be used in their respective home. For example, the child is only aware in one language or mother tongue. Parents should to practice and teach their children the language used in school. This practice will help learner when she or he is in school. In aware in one language or mother tongue. Parents should to practice and teach their children the language used in school. This practice will help learner when she or he is in school. In addressing the needs of learners with disabilities, there are suggestions for interventions to effectively facilitate their progress in language development. The first suggestion is work cooperatively with the aid that accompanies the child. To help and develop the learners with disabilities, it is better if they work as a group and cooperate as one. It is very useful and interactive. The second suggestion is interact as normally as possible with these children. To aid the needs of these learners, the teacher will act as normal and interact as learner. This kind of technique helps learners with disabilities to participate and they feel that they belong to the class. And the last suggestion is be aware of both the techniques that can be used to communicate with these children and particular constraints that these children have in processing language information. As a teacher, we need to be aware for the techniques to be used in communicating with these children. It is very useful if the teacher uses diverse teaching techniques for the better progress of the learners. There seem to be certain pragmatic developments that are in the process of evolving during the high school years. First is having knowledge of the different registers that are required in certain situations. Like in secondary level, the learners are already have the knowledge in certain situation because they are already in the process of evolving and progressing. Next, learning how to take the perspective of others in multiple ways, such as listening to others' agreements about turn taking and sticking to the topic. So, by multiple ways, they learn to take the perspective of others. And the last is varying the topics of conversation from personal to societal to the world issues. It means that they can vary a topic from one another. List of those pragmatic developments that occur during the high school years. These developments may not be evident among students during this year. In conversation. First is increasing sensitivity to situational variables. In this level, students are more sensitive in situational variables and questions. Second, use of variables register. To see the development of the learner in this level, the teacher must use variety of teaching strategy to develop their pragmatic skill. And the last one in conversation is better able to take perspective of other. In this level, the learner has the ability to understand others' point of view. In connected discourse, first is better organized narrative. In this level, the learners can easily understand and construct essay and sentence. And the second and connected discourse is clearer use of anaphora. It is use of word referring to or replacing a word used earlier in a sentence. It could be that the learners are good in using word in referring to and replacing a word in a sentence. And the last one in connected discourse is increasing distinctions in linguistic forms for different genera.
Implication of the perspective for fostering emergent literacy development. First perspective is developmental perspective. This perspective targets knowledge and skills that are built upon one another in facilitating the child toward conventional literacy. It is important to understand how children acquire emergent literacy because developing early literacy skills makes it easier for children to learn to read because we know that reading is an essential skill for a success in school and of course later in life. So we have 5 stages of developmental perspective. First one is emergent literacy. Emergent literacy, it is used to explain child knowledge of reading and writing skills before they learn how to read and write words. Second is alphabetic fluency. Alphabetic fluency is a measure of writing at the subword level. Is likely to be more appropriate indicator of kindergarteners. Next is words and pattern. It is commonly refers to something that is repeated over and over again. Next is intermediate reading. Reader can understand information conveyed in simple, predictable, loosely connected text. And last is advanced reading. Advanced reading describes learning students who learn at a rate that exceeds that of their peer in one or more content areas. For Stroman meets 2000 professional must first formulate a hypothesis regarding the child's idea of reading. So, why we need to formulate a hypothesis? Hypothesis enable researchers not only not only to discover a relationship between variables but also predict a relationship based on how theoretical guidelines or empirical evidence. Second is introduce new skills for and ideas about reading. So, why we need to introduce new skills and ideas? Uh, a child reading is important to their success in school. So, we need to develop and introduce new. Also, reading can be fun and imaginative time for children, which open doors to all kinds of new worlds for them. And last is set goals for reading performance that consider the child ideas about reading. So, you have to set goal for reading like activating background knowledge, questioning, summarizing, structuring story, and searching for information. Next perspective is component perspective. Component perspective. In developing a child emergent literacy development, specific knowledge and skills must be identified and targeted. Example of these are print meaning and print form. The basic element of perspective is drawing in order to understand human perception. Print meaning. This center of the idea that printed text contains meaning. Knowledge and skills related to print meaning are important in the development of reading comprehension. In promoting print meaning, activities such as dialogue and shared book reading are effective. Print form. Decoding abilities of children are dependent on the knowledge and skills of children. Terms of print form, which can also aid in the skills and knowledge in phonological and orthographic processor, as included in the framework of Van-Click. Child and environmental influence perspective. The emphasis in the perspective falls on comprehensive family literacy, practices that enable children to achieve conventional literacy. The literacy environment of a child can also have a positive effect on the child's emergent literacy. So, how does a child environment influence a child's life? Child early home environment has a long-term effect on a development. The home environment can affect a child's brain development. Combined perspectives. Combining perspectives can offer a more comprehensive approach to intervention compared to solely using one perspective. Embedded explicit approach. Basic goals involve development of basic literacy skill linked with reading achievement and positive literacy learning attitude in children, and to understand of the function and intention of literacy via literacy embedded activities. The two goals reflect that of component perspective in child and environmental influences perspective. Embedded explicit approach is intervention model emphasizes the dual importance of providing young children with the social embedded opportunities for meaningful, naturalistic, and literacy experience throughout the day.